What lurks behind this unassuming storefronts in Cleveland, Ohio? It's the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. Learn the history of Wiccan and the tale of those who brought it to the United States. See the tools of magic, once used by practitioners of the arcane arts. It's the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic.
Welcome to the Buckland Museum Frankenstein Radio Controls, broadcasting out of an unknown cave in the wilds of Ohio. Today we're going to chat with Wiccan writer and whiskey drinker Jason Mankey, a prolific author whose books include Witch's Book of Shadows, Witch's Athame, and Transformative Witchcraft. It always should be in every witch's library. We've heard secret rumblings of a book that's going to be very important to fans of the museum here. So let's hope that it's not some kind of oath-bound secret. But first, some business. Sunday, October 4th, is the Halloween flea market presented by Black Market Records and the Buckland Museum. An outdoor event. We urge you to order your tickets online. It's $1. If you're watching this on our Facebook page, you can find it in our events section. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then on Friday, October 2nd, there's going to be a live stream collaboration with our friends Charming Disaster, a Brooklyn duo that write murder ballads and love songs involving death, crime, science, folklore, and the supernatural. And yeah, we have a bunch of other stuff coming up too. So, keep your ear to the ground. So anyway, welcome to the virtual Buckland Museum, Jason.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. It's just really cool to hang out with people, especially the Buckland Museum people. I've wanted to do this for quite a while, so I was really flattered when you asked.
Well, awesome. So tell us a little bit, can you wrap up your whole career? Oh, I see that you're drinking whiskey, which makes me think about how I guess I know you is from your podcast, right?
Right, where we drink whiskey at every podcast. And the show starts out strong, and then it kind of gets a little more slurry as we go along.
Oh, I can hear that. So here, I'm not drinking whiskey, but I do have an Oktoberfest beer to celebrate the last few days of September. So I don't know. We'll see how we sound in about an hour from now, right?
Yeah, I only poured a small amount of whiskey into this glass, so it should be okay. We will see. Yeah, you asked about summing up my life, though. I don't really know how to do that sometimes. The last 5 or 6 years have been a real roller coaster. I published my first book with Llewellyn. That was The Witch's Athame or Athame or Athame or Athame or however you want to say that word. And then The Witch's Book of Shadows. And then with Laura Tempest Zakharoff, who was wonderful, I wrote The Witch's Altar. And then after that, I was like, I cannot be called Tool Boy for the rest of my life. So I need to stop writing tool books, and wrote Transformative Witchcraft, which is really dear to my heart because that's really my ode to initiatory Wicca in a lot of ways. There's all this history in it and how-to and rituals and just a lot of great stuff.
That's the one when people come here to the museum and we just kind of talk about different stuff. That's the one that people really know you for. And Transformative Witchcraft, which is often on sale here in the gift shop, but often I don't have copies of it. So
that's good. That's good for me. And then the Witch's Wheel of the Year came out in December of last year. I think that one sold better, but it's really just kind of a collection of rituals and a little bit about histories of Sabbats and things.
Yeah.
And and then I swear I'm done plugging myself after this, but this is the latest book, Llewellyn's Little Book of Yule. Okay, and now I'm done.
No, can you bring that back for a second here? Because I am very close to Yule because my mother is Swedish. So I always was raised in a Yule household. All right. So I'm wondering if there's anything in this book that's going to speak to me.
It's not about like Yule just being the winter solstice. And I think that's going to upset some witchy people. And I've read some of the reviews on Goodreads, and it already did upset some of them. But it's really kind of a love letter to the extended Yuletide seasons. So there's a lot of things in there about the winter solstice, of course, but also about Christmas and other magical things that happen throughout December and into early January. So there's a lot of European customs and stuff that I'm fascinated with that we don't really celebrate in the United States. Yule goats and things like that.
What about the horse head?
Yeah, from Wales, the horse head, and also on the Isle of Man, the Mary Lloyd. Fantastic tradition. So cool and so weird and so creepy. Christopher Hughes, if you know who he is, he's a druid in Wales. Of course, everybody knows Christopher. And, you know, his group works with that horse from about Samhain to Imbolc. So it's really cool stuff.
So we have one up in our window, and I put it up during Christmas. And I liked it so much, I've kept it up all year round. It's kind of like the people who don't take their Christmas lights down, right? And it's just funny. I hear the people walk by, and they're just like, whoa, what's going on in there? And I, cackle and witch cackle. So we have Jorge Gradilla is saying greetings from Mexico. Hey, Jorge. Let's see. Ashley Hall says, hi, love you guys. We love you too, Ashley. Hope everything's going super well over in Montana. And I'm so glad you got Charming Disaster. Well, yeah, they're awesome. Guion says, I'm so looking forward to the show. Oh, that's awesome.
Aww.
And Crystal says, hi, Jason, and says, plug away. So if you have any questions for Jason, please put them in the comments and talk about them. So, Jason, how did you start this journey? How did you become a witch?
It's a couple of steps there. When I was a little kid, I was in love with mythology, especially Greek mythology more than anything else. I remember being in second grade and walking outside and wondering why people no longer worship the god Zeus, and decided, hey, I'm going to say a prayer to Zeus right now. And that was pretty much it, but it was cool that I did that so young. In the summer between my 7th and 8th grade years, I read a Sybil Leek book. And maybe I didn't read all of the Sybil Leek book. I read the spells in the back of the book when I could not find another library book and my father was getting agitated with me. So I read a spell to find something. And I remember reading it aloud, and I had to say, oh, triple goddess at one point in the spell. And it was kind of like this weird feeling, this weird energy sort of washed over me when I said that. And 2 seconds later, I found the book, and it scared me so much I didn't touch witchcraft again until I was 21 years old, when I found a book called Celtic Magic by DJ Conway, which is a terrible book. It's a terrible book. It's well written, but it's factually inaccurate and has lots of problems. But it got me in the door, and it just resonated with me. The ideas that she presented, especially about Wicca, really hit home. And after reading that book 3 days later, I said my first prayer to the goddess. And, been doing this ever since. It was strange, though. When I started, I was very much goddess focused. Didn't want to have anything to do with the god. Was especially scared of the horn god. And now my next book that comes out is on the horn god. And it's the thing I probably most talk about.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was pretty psyched to see that, because I have a long history with the horn god, because when I was in 7th or 8th grade, everyone in my English class had to pick a god to dress up like and give like a 5-minute presentation. And of course, I picked Pan. I don't know why. I was just really resonated with me. I think it was probably because I was a few years earlier, I was obsessed with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And of course, there was a lot of satyrs in there. And I think that really resonated with me. And about a year ago, I was cleaning out my parents' house. They were moving to Sweden. And it was one of those days like, hey, got to get everything out of the house. And I found the horns that my mother had fashioned for me. And I had this weird, like, I hadn't thought about that day in 35 years, and I was, oh my gosh, one day I was banned for about 10 minutes. So
perfect for wearing during ritual.
Yeah, so yeah. So you are now an expert on the Horn God. I have to ask you, are you familiar with this record right here?
No, and that is usually a surprise when I'm not familiar with something, like especially musically and occult-wise.
Like, you've got to check this out. Wilburn Burchett, Master Wilburn Burchett. He spent a lot of time placing ads in the back of Fate magazine, and he would sell you these cosmic records that would like attune your mind with like hypnosis and stuff like that. And in this record here, there is a jam that's like Hymn to the Horned One, I believe it is, and I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down before the show's over. So you're gonna hear some typing for a second because I really want to make sure that I get that.
Yeah, it's this really it's kind of like this strange kind of John Fahey / drone guitar, and you listen to it and you can really feel where Master Wilburn Burchett was going with this. So, all right, so we have Erect the Temple from Lakewood, Ohio, right down the street from us, saying blessed be. Hello.
Blessed be.
Yeah. Merry meet to you. So you get your Civil Week book. You perform a spell. A few years later, the next thing you know, you read a book about Celtic witchcraft. Where do you go from there? How did you meet people back then? Because I'm guessing this was in the 90s, right?
Yeah, this was in the early 90s. This was before the craft. So it was 93, 94. It was 1994. It was definitely 1994. And I was in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, because I was going to Southeast Missouri State University. And there was not like a pagan college student group. There just weren't any pagans there. And every once in a while, I would run into somebody. They would see my book collection. And they would go, oh, you like Wicca? I practice Wicca. And then they would never say anything else about it ever again. So I never really got to practice with anybody. I did have friends who were interested in ceremonial magic, though, during that period. So, there was some affinity and some talk about magic. One of the things about me is when I start doing something, I become obsessed with it. And I want to know everything possible about that thing. And that was how I felt about Wicca. I wanted to read every witchcraft book I could find and get my hands on. I wanted to know the history of everything. I desperately wanted to practice with a group, though I didn't get to do that for a few more years. Living in Cape Girardeau, there were not a whole lot of book resources, but we had 2 bookstores in town, and I read everything that they had on witchcraft. I would go up to St. Louis every once in a while and pick up books. I think it was in St. Louis where I picked up Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. As a 90s witch, I read, all of the standard books that you have to read. I read Silver Ravenwolf's To Ride a Silver Broomstick, Buckland's Complete Book. I read Living Wicca, but not Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham during that period of time. And and Starhawk's Spiral Dance. And when I left Missouri, I moved to Michigan, where my father was, and I joined a college student group there at Michigan State University. And I was about 24 when I met most of the people in that group. So I was a few years older than everybody. Not very old, really. Certainly not very mature, but because I was 2 or 3 years older than everybody else, all of a sudden I had to start writing all of the rituals for the group. Yeah. And sometimes we do rituals at local psychic fairs and stuff. So I would sit there and put things together for us. And so, I started my group work with my feet very close to the fire. And
so that would have been like almost like being in a band at that point, where you're like, we've got a gig at the psychic fair coming up. We gotta like make sure we work on our courses and stuff like that.
I wish we'd done more work before doing these rituals, but we gave it our best shot.
Well, that's really neat. So you mentioned finding Ray's book, Complete Book of Witchcraft. So my friend Ariok tells a story about how he owned a witchcraft shop down in Mansfield, Ohio, around the time that the craft came out. And he says that the Complete Book of Witchcraft put diapers on his child for a very long time. And I think that's rad because I worked at Walden Books during this time. And my section that I took care of was the metaphysical witchcraft occult section. And, you know, I would sell copies of that book, and then the craft came out, and then I sold copies of that book. You know, they just like flew off the shelves. And, yeah, I mean, it's a classic. I read you had published a bit of a memorial to Ray when he passed away, which was one of the first articles that I found like come out like the few days after Ray passed. Did you ever get a chance to meet Ray?
I did. He actually went to one of the metaphysical psychic fairs that we did rituals at once. Gosh, what year was that? Probably 98, maybe 97, something like that. And he was the special guest there, and I got to meet him. He was very nice. He was pretty quiet, really. We all expected like this gigantic presence to fill the room, and he just seemed like a nice, humble guy, you know, that had changed the world. And I'll admit too that I was like frightened to meet him, because I'm like always frightened to meet the people who had huge impacts on my life.
It's really funny that you say that, because when I met Ray, I was just kind of like, oh, hey, you know, talking about opening up your museum in Cleveland. Cool. I was really intimidated. But then he told us a story. So he has a wine jug that he has. It's a horned god wine jug. And I was meeting with him with like Tony, and hey, what's the story with this? Well, I went to an antique store, and Gerald Gardner had one just like it, so I had to have it. And that really humanized Ray to me in like such a way, because it's like, oh, in the way that like I look up to Ray, Ray looks up to Gerald Gardner, you know, and it's a very sweet moment, because, you know, it's hard to meet your heroes. So.
I think that always comes out in his books too when he writes about Gerald.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. Here we have a picture of Ray at our opening, and people look at this picture, and then they look at the picture of Gardner that's over here that you can't see on screen, but they're like, "Oh my gosh, they look alike!" And it's like, yeah, it's you know, Gardner wrote about witchcraft. Ray wrote about witchcraft. Gardner had a witchcraft museum. Ray had a witchcraft museum. Gardner looks like this. Well, Ray kind of looks like this. So.
The next person in that line will be Gwian Raymond, who looks like both of them in his own way.
He looks almost identical to this photo of Ray we have from when the museum first opened. It's just like nice glamour shot. It's nice, very sophisticated mustache, a little bit of goatee, looking very, very on point. So, yeah, I see what you're saying there. So, let's see. Where did you buy your first witchcraft book? Walden Books or a witchcraft shop?
It was a witchcraft shop in St.
awesome.
Louis at a mall. They had like a little kiosk of like books out front, and Celtic Magic was one of them. Probably also its companion volume, Norse Magic, was the same book with different god names. But I bought it not because I was interested in the Celts or witchcraft. I bought it because I wanted to learn more about the things that Led Zeppelin liked. So my reasons for buying it were Zeppelin related.
That's awesome to hear that. So, big Zeppelin head?
I am a big metalhead, though I listen to a lot of folk music and other things, but I'm probably here because of Led Zeppelin. That was my entryway, because Crowley was something that Jimmy Page liked, and then Celtic mythology was something that Robert Plant, the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, liked, which is why I picked up Celtic magic, which got me through the door. And I still love Zeppelin to this day.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because so many people are just like, well, Jimmy Page was the one, But Robert Plant definitely had his interests that really bled into Led Zeppelin. So
it felt like Jimmy was the magus. He was the sorcerer and all this. And Robert Plant was the country magician, the cunning man from downtown, and then from out in the sticks. And then they got together and the magic was created. And Robert Plant's solo career is so freaking good. It's so amazing. He's such a talented songwriter and performer. Like, my wife and I just love him. I have long hair because of Robert Plant.
Well, it makes me wonder then, who is John Bonham? Mars and John Paul Jones. Like, John Paul Jones to me is the most enigmatic of all of them, because it's like, who really was that guy? Who is that guy? Doing records with Gallus. I mean, who does that?
He's the best bass player of that era. No offense to John Entwistle, Gwen, you're wrong. Jonesy was just amazing, and sometimes you can hear him play, and he's playing the bass line, and it also sounds like he's playing a version of the guitar riff at the same time, while Jimmy's soloing over all of that live. Just so talented, and he played the bass pedals when he was playing the mellotron or the keyboard when Zeppelin was live. So he was doing two instruments at the same time. Just a great, great musician. But yeah, he's kind of the enigma. When the stories are always out there about how the other three sold their souls to the devil, it was always like, John Paul Jones did not sell his soul to the devil.
Yeah, but he made records with Diamante Gallus, which is the ultimate baller move. So a huge shout out to John Paul Jones. So I got to ask you, when you talk about the Horn God, you're writing a book about him right now, currently. What's the common misconception that you feel, not just with like the general world, but for Wiccans, about who the Horn God is?
I think that when we talk about the Horn God, for the most part, and people have this conception in their mind, they're thinking of the Horn God as a god of nature, god of wild spaces, god of living. This is the god who wants you to go out and just enjoy every day to its fullest, and he's a god about the earth. But if you look to the first things that Gardner wrote in the 50s about the Horn God, it's very, very much about a Horn God who is a god of this world for sure, but also a god of death who rules the afterlife and welcomes souls who have died into his realm and then lets them come back to this world. So it's that embrace of death. My Horn God has a hoof in this world and a hoof in the next. And I think that's the thing that people often overlook about him. They're so focused on that idea of, Pan playing in the countryside, that we lose this sort of darker aspect of the Horn God. I think traditional witchcraft has been very good for sort of highlighting this different part of the Horn God.
Yeah, all that makes me really feel is there's a lot of death in nature, and that's such a huge part of it. So I always have a hard time quite getting this part of this, and I'm looking to you to kind of maybe shed some light. The Horn God, the god of the winter, right, from Samhain to Beltane, but also really corresponds with the sun, right?
Right.
And then from Beltane to Samhain, the goddess, right, but corresponding with the moon. How do I kind of like balance this part out? Because the wintertime is not really the time that I see the sun.
It's one of those things where we've taken a bunch of different myths and kind of conflated them into one greater myth. And I think that's really kind of what's happened with the Horn God. So there's the Horn God, as he was originally written about, a god of death and a god of the natural world. But then we sort of added this dying, resurrecting god part to it. And a lot of those ideas come from James Frazier in The Golden Bough. You see him in The White Goddess by Robert Graves. And so we wedded this idea that he grows old throughout the year and then is reborn at Yule when he's reborn as the sun. And then he ages again. And that really wasn't originally a part of the story in the 50s and 60s. That kind of came in later. And a lot of people adopted it. It's a beautiful little piece of myth. But I think it's because we've just sort of crammed all these different myths together, and they don't always fit exactly right. You know, for me, the Horn God is the god of all the seasons, the light half of the year, the dark half of the year. He just probably acts a little different at various points. You know, he's closer to the death stuff from about now to Imbolc. And then he's a little closer to the living stuff because that's what's sort of in the air. Well, maybe not in Michigan. You might have to wait until April. But, you know, in where I live here now, though, it sort of changes.
Yeah. So where are you, California? Bay Area?
California. Bay Area near San Jose, Silicon Valley, right next to Google and Apple and Facebook and all that other stuff that's ruining America.
So how did you start your day today? Did you wake up one day feeling like, I'm going to write a new book. It's going to be awesome.
I woke up thinking I'm going to do all of my Patheos Pagan work today because I'm going on vacation tomorrow.
That's cool. My wonderful wife, Jillian, and I went on vacation last week, and it was rad. We just were gone for like 2 days, but a lot of hiking in an area here in Ohio that looks like the Pacific Northwest. And I probably should not talk about that out loud because don't want everybody to move over here because it's just fantastic. Moss, ledges, everything. So when you were discovering the occult, you were also discovering rock and roll, I take it. What we talked about Led Zeppelin. What are other kind of like musical influences on you, Jason?
The Doors are a big one, and I used to do a lot of rituals to the music of the Doors, celebrating Jim Morrison as the 20th century incarnation of Dionysus, especially at festivals out east, like at Starwood and Brushwood Campground and a bunch of other places. And really, we'd play the Doors for an hour, and you could be initiated into the Morrison clan. I did not make the Doors music ritual up. Somebody else did, but I adopted it and really had fun with it for quite a while. And for me, it was also this sort of religious experience because if you look at the stories of Dionysus, they're often about divine madness, and they're often about not falling over the edge. You know, like he punished you for drinking too much. You know, he wanted you to have a good time, Dionysus, but he didn't want you to fall over that edge. So Jim is a cautionary tale in a way, as well as someone worth celebrating because all of that excess influenced his music and his lyrics and how he lived his life. I also just think the Doors is the best classic rock band to do ritual to. Just like it's moody and atmospheric. Jim was in at least one Wiccan ritual in his life. There's really nobody else we can say that about. I love Zeppelin, but it just doesn't have that atmosphere for ritual that I think the Doors does. Because the Doors just goes like to these joyous heights, and then it like plunges straight down into evil. And that is, you know, the dynamics of that are always so cool in rites.
But they also have that throb, you know, the whole thing where it's just like, dude, ride the snake. Right?
Yeah. It, you know, and there's just no other band that really has that sort of sound, you know, not to touch the earth. I don't want you to have to pay for licensing, so that's all I'm going to sing of that. But, you know, there's a lot of really strange atmosphere in the Doors. The only other band that comes close is maybe Pink Floyd, but Pink Floyd is more, let's go trip outside in the desert or something. You know, it's not really ritual music for a group. It's like ritual music for a person.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really spot on. Yeah, it's
Thanks.
I always think about that line where he's like, when I was a child, I saw a fleeting glimpse. And there is, we're currently at the museum. We have a show by a witch named Maja Dawu, and her work really, really captures that idea to me. Because when I met her, she's this incredibly energetic, alive person. But every once in a while, when I was around her, I'd catch, in the corner of my eye, I would see the oracle, like the shining, almost monstrous in its power individual that she is. And if you want to see her art, it's up till Sunday here at the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. Yeah, it's I get what you're saying there about Pink Floyd being like ritual for one. It's spent a lot of time inside of our heads, right?
Yeah, it's what it's for. We kind of live in this new golden era, though, of occult rock and roll. I mean, there's so much music now, more than ever before. And a lot of the people who are doing it aren't really occultists. But there's music with a lot of occult sounds and imagery and things in it, which is really great. My favorite of those bands right now is Ghost.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love Ghost. I love Ghost in a way that I have not loved a band since I was like 18 years old. My wife hates it almost so much because I'm so obsessed with Ghost, but I love Ghost. But there's also other bands that are less, theatrical, blood ceremony, psychedelic witchcraft out of Italy. They all have these really cool lyrics and looks, and it just fits into the witchcraft aesthetic really well.
So what about Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats?
Deadbeats, yeah. That's good. I'll admit, though, that I'm a sucker for female vocals. So, my favorite of all these bands, other than Ghost, are always the ones that are fronted by women.
Are you? Have you heard Lucifer?
Yeah. That's.
They were here a year ago. It was mind-numbing because, Nick Anderson, the drummer for Entombed, was sitting on our couch here in the museum, and I was just like, this guy created the drum sound of the best metal album of the early '90s. He's here, right here. Awesome. So what about Twin Temple? Are you a fan of theirs?
I don't know them, so I'm going to have to figure out who they are. I'm going to have to make another little typo here.
Twin Temple is the ultimate satanic doo-wop band, and they love...
They're from LA. I've listened to them. Yeah, that's so fun. It's crazy fun.
It's like if Amy Winehouse had embraced her inner demon long before it took her over and became shed the Luciferian light on the world. It's I gotta say I'm a fan. So I don't know, Jason. It's a lot of fun talking to you. It's what else you got going on? I have this feeling that there's something coming up, something that you may have signed a contract for. Something
I pertains to you because we're gonna have to hang out now.
What are you excited about? I don't know.
Yeah. So I got asked a couple of months ago what my feelings were on Ray Buckland, and by my editor at Llewellyn, and I was scared to death that she was going to ask me to do a particular thing. She wouldn't answer my questions about it. And then we had a call about when I was finishing the Horn God book for Llewellyn, and we were discussing what I was going to do next. And she said, Jason, I want you to write a biography of Ray Buckland. And I was like, oh my God, I don't really want to do this because it sounds so hard. And not that I don't love Ray and respect Ray. Ray to me is one of the most influential witches who ever walked the earth, but I've never written a biography. And so we talked about it. I talked to my wife, and I knew it'd be a major undertaking and a challenge because it's something that I'd never done before. And I talked to some of my friends about it, and they said, this is definitely something that you should do, that we think that you're capable of doing. So last week, I officially signed my contract with Llewellyn to write the biography of Raymond Buckland, which will be out in 2023 because I'm going to need a lot of time to do it. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm really thrilled to be getting this chance to live in Ray's head for a few years. When it's done, I want to launch the book at the Buckland Museum. That's already in my plans. Just going to fly out there from the West Coast, and we're going to do it there because it needs to be done there.
That's fantastic. Because, like, the thing about Raven Buckland that you're going to have to, like, really wrap your head around is he wasn't just the person that brought Wicca to America. There's so much more to this gentleman. And he, one thing that I always love to kind of, like, talk to my guests about is Ray wasn't just into, I mean, of course, he's the guy, you know, brought Gardnerian Wicca to America, but he has so many other interests. And there's so much depth to his character. Because I don't know, Jason. I don't know you very well. I know myself, though. If I'm the person that brought Wicca to America, I'd probably dine out on that every night for the rest of my life. I'd be like, oh, good. But Ray wasn't like that. One of his best friends once told me, like, yeah, I only mentioned that pagan stuff like a handful of times, which blows my mind because it's like, I can't walk down the street without being like, yeah, you know, I own the Witchcraft Museum down the street. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's you have a lot of depth that you're going to be going into here, and I know that Tony and I. So anybody out there listening, the museum and we're partners with Tony Rotunda in Columbus, Ohio, and she's got deep respect for you. Deep respect for Ray, and we're gonna make sure that anything that you need to help accomplish this, we're gonna put out there for you because this is gonna be an awesome project.
You know, the thing about Ray is, you know, the bringing Gardnerian Wicca to the United States was a huge deal. You know, it was a game changer. But then, just 10 years later, he puts out the tree, the complete book of Saxon witchcraft, offering people a way into Wicca that doesn't include initiation, paving the way for people to sort of do it themselves. And I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for that. And oftentimes, instead of that, you hear about Scott Cunningham and stuff, and that's important. But the tree was such a really important book, and he was like turning Wicca on its head, making it what it is today, letting it grow, letting it prosper, letting it form new roots. It was such a big deal. And you asked me at the beginning of the show if I ever met Ray. There was a second time where I didn't meet Ray, but I was in Lilydale. And if you know anything about Ray, he did a lot of work with the spiritualist community, and he would go to Lilydale in Western New York every year to do readings for people. And I was there, and I found his Corvette. And I knew it was his
parked in the middle of the street, right? Just didn't really care. He just, And
it has Buckland on the license plate, so you know that it's his. And of course, I had his car. So I took pictures of his car. I didn't get to see him. But I mean, to me, that's an interesting part of the Ray's story that often gets overlooked. There was a documentary on HBO that came out maybe 15 years ago now called The Dead Don't Sleep in Lilydale or something like this. And you're watching it, and Lilydale can kind of feel, I don't want to be completely dismissive of people who do New Age things, but it has this kind of New Agey feel, not really a pagan vibe at all. And, you know, my wife and I kind of smirked during a little bit of it. And then, out of nowhere, they filmed Ray talking to somebody. And the whole tenor of the movie changed. And you could see how sincere Ray was and how he had connected with the person that he was talking with, doing this reading for. And, you know, we were like, whoa, that's our guy. You know, we were so excited. But, you know, I'm really looking forward to sort of delving into these things beyond bringing Gardnerian Wicca to the United States.
It's, that's really cool. And like I said, you're welcome here. Come out to the Buckland. We have a large chunk of the archives that we feel is going to be important for all this. And I'm really, really, really excited for this to happen. So congratulations to you, and congratulations to us, because this is going to be awesome. You know, I can't wait.
You know, there's part of me that's still terrified like when I sit down to write the book. I mean, because it's just, you know, we there's no class like this is how to write a biography that we go to, as writers.
Well, Jason, do you know how we realized that we wanted to open this place in the first place? We've been talking to Ray and we've been talking to Tony for a long time. And Julie and I woke up the day after the last election and we realized that, we had to take a certain stand in the world. And I'm not going to say what that stand was. We realized that, you just got to take that leap off the cliff, much like the fool, right? And it's, yeah, I am so excited and so proud of you. It's going to be great.
Also,
writing a book about Ray, yeah, this is great.
I'll also admit though that there's a part of me that took the assignment just because I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to go to England to see where Ray grew up, right? Yeah. And I'm gonna have to go back to Lilydale, and I'm gonna have to go to all these places. And my wife and I we're supposed to go to the UK on Sunday, but obviously with COVID it didn't happen. And she's like, I'm sure that we can work that trip to do your Ray research on our vacation next year when we go. And I'm like, no way. I mean, it has to be a separate trip because I'm going to be there so much and doing so much. So really, I took the job so I could go to the UK an extra time.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations, Jason. This is really fantastic.
We'll have to plan it when there's a metal show, when we can go to a show while I'm there. Well,
So, yeah. How do you set the mood to write? So you're a writer by profession now. How do you set the stage? How do you this is my typewriter. I'm just going to start banging it out.
I wish there was some sort of secret. At this point, it's more like I have to write 1,000 words today or I'm going to be really behind and I'm going to get in so much trouble with my editor. So, it's the magical, mystical part has often been lost. However, I will say that if I'm writing a ritual, especially for a book, that is a little bit different than just writing a piece of history or an explanation of something. If I have to write a ritual, I might try to slip into that world of ritual. So the Horned God book has a John Barleycorn ritual in it. And I was really dealing with a lot of writer's block. So I was like, I'm going to go to my local pub and grab a shot of whiskey and a big cider. And I'm going to write this John Barleycorn ritual there. And so that worked. Sometimes I go to the park if I'm writing about the Horned God in a natural setting. So sometimes I mix it up, but usually, it's just, this is your job. You sit in front of your computer, which is exactly where I am right now, and you type away. And I have an old style mechanical keyboard, so I type very loudly. Every once in a while, maybe I'll write at night if I'm trying to catch a particular mood, but it usually annoys my wife because of all the clickety-clackety, so I don't do it very often. But you just kind of have to train yourself to write even when you don't feel like it. And sometimes, especially when you don't feel like it, maybe it doesn't come out as well as you want it to. But it usually is better than you think it is. It's usually not the giant disaster that you've made it out to be in your mind.
But, it's the John Barleycorn thing made me think about something. And witchcraft in movies. What's your favorite witchcraft movie?
Wow. That is a really good question. I love the Oliver Stone Doors movie, and there is a witchcraft scene in that, but that sort of feels like cheating a little bit.
All right.
There were a couple of documentaries made that starred Alexander's back in the 70s.
Legend of the Witch.
Yeah, those are also sort of cheating, but they're so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
I don't hate The Craft, and my wife and I watched it again the other day, but it didn't really resonate maybe as much for me because I'd already been doing it by that point. So it wasn't my gateway or my introduction. Oh, such a tough... I'm really trying to think because I used to know the answer to this, and now it's slipping my mind.
What about Simon, King of the Witches? Have you seen that one?
Which one?
Simon, King of the Witches. So when we first went into lockdown, I interviewed this guy, Gary Parsons, who's like this British witchcraft movie expert. And he gave me this list of witchcraft movies to watch. And I watched them all, and I was just like, oh my gosh, these are completely out of control. And one of them, Simon, King of the Witches. I have to recommend it to everyone that sees it.
Oh, my favorite witch movie is The Love Witch. It's not even close. I forgot about it for a second. I love The Love Witch. I love the aesthetic of The Love Witch. It's got like that 60s, 70s vibe to it. Everybody dresses that way. The rituals appear that way. That has that sort of old school, this is the Witch's Bible by Janet and Stuart Farrar type of look of witchcraft to it. I love The Love Witch. You don't look like you love The Love Witch.
No, I love it more than anything in the world.
Okay, good.
It's like one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And we actually have props from The Love Witch on display here in the museum. You know, the stuff that she sells to the local witch shop, which is an authentic part of witchcraft culture. Well, Anna Biller bestowed upon us the things that she sells to the witch shop. And she gave them to me, and I saw them as sacred objects. It's just like, oh my gosh, really? You want us? Well, Hillbilly Witchcraft Museum in Cleveland, Ohio, to present these to the world? She's like, yes, of course. So every day I talk about The Love Witch. And I got to say, awesome answer, Jason.
Yeah. I don't know why it took me so long to remember that movie, but I think when people think of their favorite witchcraft movie, they're usually thinking of something that's older and not something from the last 5 years.
Spot on. The thing I love about that movie is like every part of it is something, if you're like immersed in this kind of culture, you'll see something where you're like, that's totally right on. That's a bit off, but I like it. That's fantastic. And the whole time it looks like a Hammer horror film. So like your eyes are feasting on this beauty.
There's like the acting choices are strange in the movie, and a lot of people can't get by those because it feels like all the actors are like saying their dialogue in this very stilted way, and they are, but they're trying to say it like people would have said dialogue 40 or 50 years ago. It's a conscious choice by the director. It's not because everyone involved in the film is a terrible actor.
The director is a genius, and everything about that is like, it's like a Kubrick film, where it's all her vision bestowed upon us. She's like the Tyler Perry of witch directors. Written, directed, produced, set design, prop design by Anna Biller.
Yeah, she does so much of her movies. Like she like makes the dresses and stuff. It's crazy. Yeah. It's so cool. I love it.
When we were there, she was like trying to find the rug, and she's like keeps like she's asking her common law husband guy. She's asking her friend Jareth showed up, and he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's Jareth from the film." And do you have the rug in your basement? No, I think it's over here. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if we get the rug from the Love Witch, we'd have to like build a whole new like wing to the museum dedicated to just people laying there.
The rug is amazing. The rug is like one of the best parts of the whole movie. And after I saw it, I went online to see if I could buy the rug from her or from someone because I desperately wanted the rug. Yeah. I have a ritual room. I felt like I deserved the rug.
Yeah, I think it needs to go to a public like kind of place like the Buckland Museum where people from all over the world can make a pilgrimage and hang out.
I would agree. I would keep it for like a year and then I would bequeath it to you all.
Maybe we could do like some kind of like timeshare. We could all just lounge about on it. Mm-hmm. So, Jason, I have to ask you, Halloween's coming up. What does Halloween mean to you as a witch?
You know, I'm really always was more of a Christmas person. I love Halloween. Yeah. I was really more of a Christmas person. at this point, it's like Christmas to Halloween is just like one long soup of holiday. But
Yeah.
I loved kind of the feeling in the air at Halloween, which was really different from Christmas when I was a kid, because there was something scary about it. And we like to be scared. It's why we like horror movies. It's why most fairy tales are actually really frightening once you get by the sanitized versions. And I liked that feeling that happened at Halloween. As I became older, I think I liked Halloween because I liked that you could be something that you weren't at Halloween. You know, like we could play dress up and it's not frowned upon. And, you know, there are more places to do that now, but Halloween is fun because everybody is kind of involved. For me, there's a real line in the sand between Halloween and Samhain. Halloween is a secular holiday where kids go trick-or-treating and adults probably drink too much and go partying. And then Samhain is a moment of reflection and a moment to be with my beloved dead and my mighty dead, the people that I've lost, the people who have influenced my craft and what I do. So to me, they bleed over a little bit for sure, but there's also a really big difference. When people are like, oh, Halloween is too commercial. I'm like, no, that's not too commercial. It is what it is. Samhain is not Halloween. They're two different things.
Good answer. You know, I always say it's interesting because like Halloween comes up and it becomes our big time of the year consistently. And I'm like, that's cool, but there's all sorts of other times to go get your witchcraft on. And just Halloween is kind of like, you know, the time when we get all the press. So,
you know, I mean, it's great that we get press at some point, but if you look at the holiday with the most pagan traditions from antiquity that are a part of it, the answer is Yule, Christmas. There's a lot more that's actually very ancient in that than there is Halloween. I mean, Halloween, as we celebrate it today, is a pretty new holiday in some ways. I mean, trick-or-treating only dates back to 1939, I think. So how we celebrate Halloween is a relatively modern thing, not a specifically ancient one.
So,
or even very old.
You just wrote the book on Yule. Is there anything that surprised you in your research?
Not really, because I've been probably researching Yule for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there really wasn't a whole lot that I was shocked by. It was challenging, though, because this is Llewellyn's little book of Yule. So they're very little books. You know, they don't cost a whole lot, and they're not 120,000 words like Transformative Witchcraft. So it was hard to write in brief ways. You know, like, I want to tell the history of Santa Claus for 5,000 words, and you can't really do that. So that was probably the most challenging. But, you know, you find out things while you're researching the book, traditions from other countries that, you know, are really fascinating to me. You know, like some countries still primarily celebrate Christmas on January 6th, on 12th night or 12th day, on Epiphany. So that's, you know, we don't think about that because we're so insulated. It also just makes me sad when I'm researching something like the Yule book, because America's kind of like torn all of the magic away from Christmas that still exists in parts of Europe. We don't have the Krampus or the Befana running around. You know, we kind of settled on Santa Claus for all of that stuff. And it just feels like there should be a lot more that we're not doing.
So I want to kind of ask you about that, because Krampus, obviously, like some kind of like prismatic like shard of the horned god, right?
It's hard to say. I try to be very careful with history and not say things that are speculative. We don't know exactly where the Krampus came from or how it originated. We do know that like the first time it was written about was, I think, the 16th century, which would make it pretty late for a pagan survival.
Yeah.
But I also think that the Krampus is sort of, even if it's not a direct descendant of Kernonos or Pan or another sort of horned god, it's like the sexy, dangerous part of Christmas that goes back to those impulses people have as pagans. One of the coolest things about the Krampus are the late 19th century, early 20th century postcards where he's got this humongously long Gene Simmons-like tongue, and the women of the household are just looking at him with longing, like, I'm going to get dirty with Krampus. He's the sexual id of Krampus. And I love, as somebody just said, we celebrate Krampus night every year. There's like this kind of reawakening of interest in the Krampus. And he's sort of coming back in a big way, which is really nice. You see Krampus runs in the United States, and you see people dressing up as Krampus and talking about Krampus.
Huge. It's like, if you have a Christmas event in Cleveland and Krampus isn't showing up, it's not something that you want to go to, which I think is pretty wild. But you know what it really reminded me of there is the old Christmas classic. I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am finding that at this point of the night, my Oktoberfest have taken over my brain, and it's probably time for us to close this down. I'm taking a lot of cues from your very awesome podcast. What is it? Witches, Whiskey and Wit, which you can find on wherever you find podcasts in the world. Jason, I really appreciate you coming in here, giving us the exclusive explosion of information about Ray's biography that you have now penned. At least your name is on the contract, right?
Exactly, yeah. There's not even a title page yet because I have 2 books I have to finish before that. But
are you
I'm writing a book? Yeah, I can talk about them. I'm writing a book called The Magic of the Witch with a couple of people from my coven and my wife Ari, and it's about the different kinds of magic that witches use and how the different kinds of magic work. And then there's spells. I've never done a spell book, so that's kind of exciting. And then with Estrella Taylor, I don't know if you've had her on the show before, but she and I are writing The Witch's Guide to the Greek Gods together, which will have a history of the gods, and then a personal reflection from somebody who works with that particular Greek god, and then an activity to do with the particular god. So there's like going to be 30 different deities in the book, mostly focused on the Olympians, but also there'll be Hecate and Pan and a whole host of others. So I have those 2 books to do, and they're supposed to be done by June of next year. And then it's my life. My life is Ray,
So I noticed that you pronounced it Hecate. Any other variations you want to throw out there?
I don't really care how people say it. They can say Hecate or Hecate. She's a goddess. I'm sure she knows that she's being addressed.
I went to see a guy named Timothy Wiley speak one time. He was a member of the Protestant Church of the Final Judgment. And there was this whole part where he talked about, what was her name? The head of the Protestant Church. And she got destroyed by a bunch of dogs that escaped from their animal sanctuary. And he goes, and she was shredded to pieces like Hecate and her hounds. And that's always resonated with me. And I was like, from now on, it's Hecate. And
we say most of the names of the Greek gods wrong anyways. It's not Dionysus, it's Dionysus. Yeah.
Right.
But I think that they can figure it out.
You're putting it out there into the world, and if they can't figure it out, what kind of gods are they, right? So
yeah. They seem to have blessed me, so I feel good that, even if I don't say it exactly the Greek way, they know what I'm talking about. And if you go to Greece, they'll say it like the English way for tourists.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a fun little aside there. So give me just a sec here. I'm going to say goodbye to our friends, and I hope you stick around for a second because I want to give you a proper goodbye. So, thank you everyone for tuning in, hanging out with us. I don't really have anything to close with other than the fact that we got a bunch of stuff going on. Follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. If you want to know what the what the divine secrets of the universe that we're spewing out. And Michelle has it right here. It is our intent. That's right. It's I think that's what shines through. So looking to everyone hanging out with us here, I hope that you guys like wake up tomorrow and just stay witchy, my friends. Take care.